you ever been told you can't graduate unless you follow a pointless rule? Back in 2013, I was a senior at a brand new high school. My parents had just divorced, and I decided to leave my hometown, my old school, and even my mom behind to move in with my dad. We lived in a small apartment, and all I really wanted was to finish up my last year quietly. But almost immediately, this new school introduced something called the Senior Project. It was based on an acronym, something like IMPACT, where each letter stood for a value the school supposedly wanted us to embrace. The assignment? Write about how those values shaped our time there. Then came the warning. If you don't do this project, you won't walk at graduation. For most students, that would have been a big deal. But I had only been there for a few weeks. Their acronym meant nothing to me, and I didn't care about walking. I asked my dad if it mattered to him. He said no. That was all I needed. I decided right then I wasn't doing it. At first, I thought that was the end of it, but it became a running battle for the rest of the year. The first round came during project check-ins. Every senior had to report progress. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm not doing it." The staff member blinked at me, clearly confused. She warned me again that I wouldn't walk. I told her I understood. She wrote down my name and waved me along. A few weeks later, I was called into the vice principal's office. She said she'd heard I was confused about the assignment, maybe didn't know how to approach it. I explained clearly. I knew exactly what they wanted, but I thought it was pointless and wasn't going to do it. She didn't know how to respond and eventually just let me go. Then came the moment they overstepped. Another summons, another one-on-one. This time, the vice principal looked a little too pleased with herself. She told me they had spoken to my mom on the phone, and she really wanted me to walk at graduation. I was quiet for a second before saying, I live with my dad. She tried again. Right, but your mom said she wants to see you walk. I stared at her and said, I live with my dad for a reason. She froze, unable to respond, and I walked back to class. By this point, it wasn't about the project anymore. They had crossed a line by dragging in a parent I wasn't even living with, trying to use her to pressure me. That made me more determined than ever not to give in. The next step was the principal himself. He was one of those overly cheerful types, always trying to be the fun administrator. He greeted me warmly, sat me down, and said he understood my situation. Since I was new, maybe the acronym hadn't meant much. So he offered a compromise. Just do the project on one single letter. That would be enough. I looked at him and said, no. His smile faltered. But it's really not that much work. Just one letter. I understand. I'm still not doing it. He leaned forward. But then you won't be able to walk. Yep, finally, he asked, so what's the issue here? You called my mom. His mouth opened like he was about to say something, but no words came out. We just sat in silence for 20 seconds, him fumbling for an argument and me sitting there waiting. Eventually, I asked if we were done, and when he didn't stop me, I walked out. It was only later I learned why they were so desperate. Principals in California get shuffled around every few years. Ours was about to leave, and he wanted to go out with a perfect record. 100% participation in the senior project. The project didn't affect grades. It wasn't tied to state requirements. It was just his personal legacy. His plan was to pressure every senior into compliance, and his big stick was threatening to block students from graduation ceremonies. And it worked. Almost everyone else caved. Almost. I stuck to my decision. The deadline passed, and they had to announce that 99.6% of seniors completed the project. The perfect number slipped away. But the story didn't end there. A little while later, I was called back into the vice principal's office one final time. She told me that despite my refusal, they were still going to let me walk, and she handed me 5 tickets for family and friends. I laughed, left the tickets on her desk, and walked out. On graduation day, I didn't even show up. In the end, they gave me a choice. Do the project or don't walk. I picked option B and stuck to it, even as they tried every trick they could think of. And after all the meetings, the calls, and the pressure, they let me walk anyway. The irony? I didn't even care enough to go.